Fans, next time you need tickets to a game or concert, head to StubHub and discover why millions of fans make it their go-to site for finding great seats, even on the day of the event and even if it's sold out. The only question is, where do you want to sit? StubHub!
Bill Simmons has started the Grandland Network.
Grandland Network.
Basically, he's rounded up some people capable of talking about sports and other stuff too, in an entertaining way, if I were to take a guess.
This is the Grandland Network.
Welcome to the BS Report. This is the Hollywood Perspectives podcast. My name is Chris Ryan. I am a writer for Grantland.com. And on the other line, somewhere in Northern California, wearing mismatched high heels, it's Andy Greenwald.
Good to be here. This is exciting.
Yeah, this is the BS Report takeover by the Grantland Network. Bill's in London, so some of the fine podcasts from the Grantland Network are taking over the feed this week. If you are new to the show, Andy and I talk about television, music, movies, popular culture, Rick Ross, Wale's career opportunities.
All the good stuff. I wish I could be there in the studio with you, but unfortunately, as you said, I'm in Northern California scouting locations for an upcoming Josh Lucas project you and I are working on.
Is it called Wine Country?
It's basically like an action version of Sideways.
The Glory Road.
No, let me pitch you on this. It's like Sideways, but with a little bit of extreme sports mixed in. So Instead of wine tasting and mountain climbing, it's about mountain tasting. I think it's going to be good for us, so I hope the listeners of the BS Report look forward to seeing it in theaters sometime February 2012.
Yeah. No, that's it. I can't wait to see that on the Stars slate, the Straight to Stars production slate. All right, Andy, let's talk a little bit about Breaking Bad to get things kicked off. Another week, another step down into the darkness from Walt White. Starting to get a little devilish.
Yeah, it's really dark. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of creator Vince Gilligan, he's long promised that his main character would eventually become a villain,
Yeah.
This is a little bit of him saying, like, look, this is what you wanted, this is what I promised, here it is, and it's not pretty. I feel like, for the last 4 seasons up till now, there's been, a lot of hip checks along the way in terms of our ability to cheer for Walter White.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every so often he'd poison a kid, torch a perfectly good sports car, normal stuff that you could sort of, sweep under the rug. I feel like he's gone so far to the other side this year, and it's not a worry, it's how it's being done, but it's definitely been a little heavy-handed, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely, I think that you, over the course of this season, you've been a little bit more forgiving of some of the more like you said, heavy-handed sort of characterization that they're doing with Walter now. I thought that it's really interesting to watch this show when it's a big Skylar Walter episode because I find myself wanting to eat a bag of glass.
Do you keep one next to you on the couch?
Yeah, just lightly like touching it, just like kind of every once in a while, just making sure it's still there. But I really did want to drown myself with Skylar during this episode. I find watching those scenes just incredibly. I don't think that I've seen people say it's so tense and it's so it's not emotionally involving as much as it almost feels self-punishing to watch it.
I'm not as I wasn't as negative this week with it. I feel like it was horrifying and it was intentionally horrifying. And I thought one of the best things about this episode was I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me on this was it was directed by Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
Who directed a great episode of the show 2 seasons ago. The episode with the fly in Super Lab. And he's also a film director. He has the movie Looper coming out with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Right. He got his Bruce Willis eyes on.
I'm assuming. I'm not there with you. I'm assuming you do too.
Yeah. I also just made an awesome Bruce Willis eyes pantomime.
God, I wish this was a video podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like this episode was filmed like a horror movie in miniature, and I felt like every touch of Walter onto Skylar's body felt like a very intense violation, and I feel like it was very palpably communicated. There were all these little moments that, all told, felt like, again, like a Friday the 13th set in a dollhouse or something, with Lydia screaming silently into a pillow, that scene of Skylar just calmly garroting her finger.
Yeah.
And then ultimately that scene of Walt shaving his head and the blood that sort of gushed out of, it's a normal shaving cut, it's not a big deal, but it looked like someone just had their throat slit. So I felt like they just visually did a very good job of communicating the physical, palpable horror of the situation. And, I feel like last week you and I were going back and forth wondering whether Skylar's reaction to her husband was a little abrupt.
Yeah, like if it was too much of a left turn from sort of being Lady Macbeth at the end of last season to now being just this horrified, cuckolded wife.
Right. Well, I felt like I bought it a little more this time for two reasons. One, because all of a sudden I got it. Like, I'm actually having the same reaction to Walt that she is. I mean, I'm cringing every time I see him, so it's not so far-fetched that she would be. But this episode really spelled out what her concern was, that she said in the big bedroom blow-up scene, which I felt like was one of the best examples of spousal conflict that you watch on TV, which I know is one of your number one things you look for in TV.
I'm really big into bedroom arguments.
It's just one of your things.
That's one thing The Wire lacked.
There could have been more scenes with McNulty and his ex.
Yeah.
Or Daniels and his bougie wife with their crystal wine goblet.
Yeah.
That really was lacking. It reminded me of one of my favorite episodes, and when I say favorite, almost unwatchable, but favorite episodes of Sopranos, Whitecaps, which was the episode where Tony and Carmela finally really have it out. He starts punching the wall next to her, and the violence really finally, that's been simmering, finally boils over. This was that equivalent scene to me, and in that scene, you found out that it's not. She said, "I will keep laundering money. I will keep doing all these things." She said she was a coward, but she was in fact almost rational about everything. The one thing that she won't do is have the children around. And then, in that sense, I think you and a couple other people made the very smart point that was, in many ways, reminiscent of Godfather 2.
Yes, at the sort of infamous abortion conversation between Diane Keaton and Al Pacino's characters in Godfather 2, where it's just like, I would never bring your son into this world. Right,
like I'm trapped and I've given into my fate.
Yeah.
But and it's also the ripping the Band-Aid off of the reality Band-Aid, which I think was a band in the 90s.
Reality.
Off of Walt's existence, because he's sort of been carrying himself like the Don, like the boss that he thinks he is, and really all those lines about finally let's start looking forward to things again. Let's really have some chocolate cake. I mean, that certainly was laid on a bit thick, but hopefully this reveal that his wife actually thinks he's a monster.
Well, Walt's kind of going through this process where it's like he's gotten, it's like he drove the family car into a divider on a highway, and then he turns to Skylar and he's like, look, see, the stereo still works. It's like, this is your doing, and I get all that. One of the other interesting thing, and you've brought this up a couple of times in terms of the visual, what an accomplished visual show this is.
Yeah.
I did think, shout out to Rian Johnson. I love Brick. I can't wait for Looper. But they need to turn some lights on in the Walt White household. This is not a brownout. You can have more than one source of illumination during a family dinner. I don't think it needs to look like, the Wuthering Heights up in there.
I totally agree with you. I feel like, since Gilligan has generally been almost flawless in terms of communicating his message, and just sort of unwaveringly confident in how he's doing it, I wonder, and this is probably, I would say, I'm going to preface this comment by saying this is probably not true, but I do wonder if this is an example of something where, he maybe when they were conceiving of these first episodes of the season, they weren't sure if it would be clear in some ways where Walt was on his moral journey to hell.
Yeah.
So they were like, let's really amp everything up to make it clear, and then, when they get the footage back after they shoot it, they see the performance is already selling it, that they didn't need the rest of it, but, it's already been done.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about that. I also think that, so much of the last few seasons, it's been easier to root for Walt, even when he does horrible things, because he's still he's causing everything, but people are constantly putting the screws on him. He's in impossible situations that he may have put himself in, such as, lying to his family and, cooking illegal drugs. But still the specific circumstance, Hank is outside of the trailer, or, he has to make it to the hospital for his baby's birth.
Right.
Those are just sort of like adrenalinized. Can you help me with that? Adrenalized circumstances that,
That's right here in my Merriam-Webster's dictionary.
Be careful that your bag of glass is resting precariously on it. The situation that you immediately just start cheering for no matter what the circumstances. You're just used to that, in terms of narrative storytelling. I feel like now that he's in charge, there's no one putting those screws on him, and we're just seeing him laid bare and his badness laid bare. But also, this is the longest run of episodes, I think, where he's generally been untroubled. Usually
Right.
he's a mess. Usually someone shows up to punch him in the face or something even worse happens.
Yeah, and I also think it doesn't, you've got a situation now where, the scenes with Walter and Skylar were so oppressive and dark and seemingly going on forever. And then you'd get these bursts of, energy from Lydia and Jesse, and their interactions with Mike, that I think that Jesse sort of has taken on a lot of the humanity of the show. Like a lot of like the sort of in a weird way, we are now like, I think most viewers would identify more with Jesse, and Jesse is sort of the guide through this entire journey, and now Walter has become the outsider, in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, I thought you also didn't you text me after the episode saying that you wish that Mike, Jesse, and Lydia had their own show?
Yeah, I mean, but I often am like that with a lot of these like kind of like long running serialized shows. You just wind up starting to play favorites, and I'm sure that there was like a long, like I was really into like Daniel Faraday's plotline on Lost, you know what I mean? I could have gone for a lot more of that. Like you just wind up picking different threads that you would rather. I mean, that also happens in novels where you're like, especially ones that alternate perspective, and you find like, oh man, like I don't want a chapter about this guy. I want to go back to, whoever.
I agree. I also would say that because, Walt was never heroic, but just because the way the thing was structured, he's the hero.
Yeah.
And so you sort of experience things through him. But I've spent the first few weeks sort of wondering if the show could replace Gus as the villain. Obviously, villainry is not in short supply, so Walt's the villain. But what we've seen now is, I think, characters like Jesse and Lydia filling in some of the emotional gaps, in that Jesse sort of is now carrying that sort of, he's doing bad things, but he has some shred of humanity left. And Lydia, who I'm pretty into, I like her as a character, she has the manic, I can't believe I'm caught in this feeling that that Walt had for a lot of the first few seasons.
Yeah.
So they're picking up some of that sort of emotional load. But, something clearly big is coming. I guess the question is whether the big undoing of this current setup is going to happen in these 8 episodes, or if we're going to have to wait until next year for everything to go boom.
I wanted to ask you a little bit, if you could just, and you can tell our listeners a little bit about this. There was a comment in your Breaking Bad recap that talked a little bit, and this is sort of like a wider angle way of looking at the show and just shows in general. But it was talking a little bit about the way these shows, Breaking Bad chief among them, and these sort of like I guess you, for lack of a better term, call them premium shows, like shows that aspire to sort of the levels that we were maybe accustomed to award-winning movies aspiring to, and how the way that these shows unfold are almost impacting. This one commenter talked about the way it impacted his enjoyment of movies.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. This guy named Mark Rattel, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, commented. And let me just preface this by saying, getting great comments on these recaps. People are being really respectful and really interesting, and really pointing out when I mistake a cockroach for a fly. Yeah. But, I apologize for that last week.
Vamonos pest.
Vamonos pest, man. Let's just keep it moving.
Yeah.
But this guy, Mark, made a comment saying that he just can't really deal with narrative movies anymore because, the amount of time that Breaking Bad has been able to spend developing the character and basically pushing him over the cliff, it's just not comparable to what you can see in movies anymore. So that sort of storytelling depth has spoiled him. And I think that was interesting because this is definitely not the first. This is not the first podcast on the internet to make the argument that the sort of character-based storytelling that we used to like in movies, that has now totally migrated to TV.
Right.
But in this comment, it made me think that maybe it's happening to action movies or crime movies or thriller movies too, in the sense that this. First of all, that's the genre Breaking Bad is operating in.
Yeah.
But you're not only seeing a story of someone turning evil, but then you're forced to sit with that person and wallow with it and really see how unpleasant it is. Last week we saw on Breaking Bad there were clips from Scarface in it.
Yeah.
Scarface is an example of someone you're rooting for someone even though he's doing pretty terrible things. But that dude goes out in a blaze of glory, 2.5 hours after you first meet him.
Well, yeah, it's almost like, too, it's like we're starting to expect from the movies that, if you don't have, like, a guy with a cape or, like, dinosaurs coming back to life in the movie, you're just like, well, why isn't this just a TV show? I remember when I was explaining to you the plot of the recent Mark Wahlberg classic Contraband.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, and you were like, what? I think I had to run it back a couple of times and just sort of illuminate all the... Now, Contraband, it's up for debate whether that would make a good television show, but it's almost like the plot of a show in terms of, like, it's not actually dissimilar to the plot of Breaking Bad about a guy who's tried to go, to go a certain direction in his life and is forced to go in another direction and then, possibly likes it a little bit, But it's interesting that, when you see, if a film isn't really dynamic in a visual or special effects way, they don't really have the freedom that these television shows do to really develop characters. And a lot of these genre shows are just far better than their counterparts in the movie theaters.
But I would argue I would also argue the opposite of that, which is TV is a great medium for that sort of serialized storytelling and that sort of deep diving into characters and emotional relationships. But the one thing that movies do incredibly well, but what's incredibly hard to do, is communicating an enormous amount through visual shorthand.
Okay.
To take 2 hours and tell a complete story. And I feel like some of the best movies that I'm blanking on completely, which makes me a terrible commentator for this. But if you think about some of the very clean, crisp crime movies we like, think about the
Training Day or something.
Training Day, or or even older, the Friends of Eddie Coyle or something like that, or even a Soderbergh movie like Out of Sight.
Yeah, perfect example. Yeah,
which are just they're adrenalized. Yeah, I used it that time. But they're also precise, and they're telling a specific story with a specific flair, and you get out.
Right.
And I feel like that's sort of becoming a lost art, and I don't know whether that's because whether the rise of television or the rise of comic books as a dominant, whatever for movies, has changed things to the point where we expect and demand tons of exposition.
Yeah.
Or if, the only directors who get movies made these days are people who can't be told no.
Yeah.
But, the commenter on the Breaking Bad thing was actually talking about Dark Knight Rises, which, you and I talked about at great length a few weeks ago, and we both liked, but it doesn't obey any movie rules. I mean, it doesn't tell a sharp and clever story. It's just when you think it's about to end, then there's 3 months in a pit in the middle of India.
Yeah, and the star disappears for the second act.
Yeah, so I wonder if. Okay, well, I'm not going to wonder because I think we both know the sort of pessimistic answer to this. But I think it might be fun to try to pay attention to see if there are any filmmakers who are going to go in the opposite direction, who instead of we've seen this fleeing of talent from movies to TV.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there'll be any sort of reclamation of movies that's oh no, we can do this really well. It's not just that we can spend more money on the budget to blow up Pittsburgh, but we can actually have this kind of sleek, quick storytelling.
Yeah, I think that at this point you're talking about the talent drain back and forth. I wonder whether or not it's an economic thing. It seems like you rarely read about a movie that's budgeted less than $75 million somehow.
Oh,
so
sure,
their investment needs to have a certain return, and even if and the ceiling for that return needs to be at a certain height. So Contraband or Training Day, even if Training Day was made today or something, can only be made it can only expect so much of a box office return, even if Giovanni Ribisi gives one of the more weird performances ever and probably should have won 7 Oscars for it. You can't really expect Contraband to make $200 million. Right?
No, but that's exactly right. But that's the economy of it. The only movies made are $10 million movies or $150 million.
Yeah, it's like a guy who only plays high stakes poker, and even if he loses, he's like, well, I could have won a lot.
Right. There's really no middle ground. It's sort of interesting. This is definitely going off demo for us.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of interested to see, just purely as someone watching the movie industry. There's that movie coming out in a week or two. It's called what's it called? It's the Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep movie.
Oh yeah, Hope Springs. Son.
Hope Springs, right? And that's a movie that was written by one person.
Yeah.
Vanessa Taylor, who also writes for Game of Thrones, which is super weird, since this is a movie about 70-year-old people rediscovering their sex life.
Yeah. North of the wall.
Exactly, that's what happens north of the wall. That's what they don't want to show you.
You get up there and it's just Steve Carell hosting couples therapy.
No, but just just elder sex, just nonstop in the ice and snow. But that's a movie. In some ways, that sort of seems old-fashioned, and I feel like it's definitely counter-programming. But if it does well, in that it's it's not a $200 million movie. There are no special effects, unless you count Tommy Lee Jones' Viagra.
That was like Misty May Trader serving that up to Carrie Walsh right there. Yeah. I was waiting for you to spike that. You served it to yourself though.
Do you want to do a Cialis joke there? Do you want to toss the football?
You'd be Misty May and Carrie. That's always been my idea.
Do you want to toss the football through the tire swing, or so to speak?
Come on, serve it up.
But so like that'll be an example of that's a movie basically made for grown-ups or older grown-ups, and even just this morning we're taping on a Tuesday.
Older grown-ups.
Did I say older grown-ups?
Yeah.
I'd like to create a different category of adult that's older than us.
That's what's going to swing the election for Barack, the older grown-ups demographic.
That's what you have to go for. The trailer for the new Judd Apatow movie came out this morning, and even if that ends up being a little bit indulgent or whatever, This Is 40 it's called. It's he's trying to make a movie about yes, there's probably a few pink eye jokes, but it's essentially him trying to make a movie.
Yeah, I mean that's the white whale of the movie industry, right? Is like these sleeping giant demographics that every once in a while get tapped into. So it's like, whether it's a Nancy Meyer movie, like It's Only as Good as It Can Get Tomorrow, or whatever those movies are called, or whether it's Katherine Heigl, or I'm not even talking about like something that appeals directly to women or something. I mean, it's like that weird like over 40 goes to the movies once every 3 months like demographic, that I think that people are always like, could this be the runaway hit?
Yeah.
For people who don't want to go see Bourne Legacy, like. Yeah,
but even there's that, but then even the quote unquote quality movies are very specifically programmed, and they all come out in the fall. And you and I are really excited about the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, The Master. But even that is being curated and shepherded exactly to be the quality counter programming of the fall.
Sure.
I think that's sort of why we had so much fun talking about Beasts of the Southern Wild a few weeks ago. Even though, I feel like both of us, we weren't entirely sure if we liked it, but it was a surprise. And it wasn't made to be quality at the end of the year, an Oscar movie. It wasn't made to be a big budget thing. It was just this very strange personal surprise.
Yeah.
Speaking of strange personal surprises.
Sure.
I don't have one. I was hoping you could segue. It seemed like a good setup.
I want to get. We can keep talking about actually the current movie landscape, but I just wanted to check in with you really quick because I know you've got a piece coming up on the site soon, and this is a very strange time in television. We got Breaking Bad sort of towering over the landscape. I guess Newsroom is busily BlackBerrying on an airplane somewhere, but there's not a lot being premiered right now. And strangely enough, NBC, who are currently all Olympics everything except when you actually want to watch the Olympics, they are going to be debuting a show, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty smart of them. I mean, we've talked many, many times, and we'll continue to talk about the ridiculous hole that NBC has found itself in, not unlike the hole Bruce Wayne found himself in.
Yeah.
In terms of ratings and prestige and people punching it in the back.
Just dudes chanting "Rise" at Bob Greenblatt as he's like throwing the rope.
Just chanting. There's a lot of chanting in Burbank these days. But the one bright spot that NBC has in terms of ratings is, of course, the Olympics, and so it's pretty smart of them. They've been blanketing the airwaves with ads for their new shows, and then they're actually going so far as to premiere some of them this month. And the first one,
which is sort of like the classic. The NBC's always tried to piggyback new shows off the back of huge events, like whether I remember, they've debuted a couple of shows off the back of the Super Bowl, famously right. Homicide: Life on the Street. Some, I'm sure, shows in the last 15 years they've done that.
Well, right, but that's the thing. I mean, they have, as much as people want to reinvent the wheel when it comes to TV, there's still some things that just have always work. And
like lead-ins, right?
Lead-ins, yeah. It's very rare for there to be a new show that can just debut itself, basically, that can just attract eyeballs without it having a lead-in, without it having, you don't build from something else. And NBC literally has nothing to build on.
Right.
Castles made of sand, Chris. Over there. And
is that a beach volleyball joke?
I hope so. I'd really like to thread the needle of continuity through this podcast.
Welcome to Beach Volleyball Weekly.
So what they do have is the Olympics, and so the show they're premiering tomorrow night, Wednesday of this week, is the show called Go On. Which is very confusing because if you see it written out, it spells goon, which would be a much more interesting show.
Which would be so good if it was just like about freeing Max B.
I thought it was going to be about like Matthew Perry, like on the third flyer shift or something. I don't know hockey, by the way. It's good for the BS report. So it's interesting because not only are they premiering it early, but this is sort of their new gold standard of the type of shows they want to do. I wrote a piece a few weeks ago after the network president, Bob Greenblatt, did his little spiel for the TV critics, basically saying that, he has a lot of respect for shows like Parks and Recreation and 30 Rock and even The Office, that are critically liked or, some love, but ratings challenged. But he has respect for those shows, but he would like NBC to be broader, to basically be more popular.
He's been singing that song for a while.
What's that?
He's been singing that song for a while, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you wrote something almost a year ago now about, like, get ready. If you like Parks and Recreation and Community and The Office, good for you, because those are going to be the only 3 shows on NBC that are going to appeal to that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see his own taste in comedy. He championed Whitney and Are You There, Chelsea? And then this fall, there are a lot of shows that...
Sassy Ladies.
He likes Sassy Ladies. He did run Showtime for a number of years.
Bob Greenwald just pumping that Julie Tenuta comedy album in The Office.
She's due for a comeback.
Why is that the only sassy lady? She's not even a sassy lady.
Didn't she have an accordion?
Yeah. So I guess... Wait, was that her?
Judy Tenuta? Yeah.
Yeah, that was her, with the accordion.
Is that your go-to sassy lady in 2012?
Look, I have lots of fields of expertise. I didn't quite finish my 80s female stand-up comedy elective.
Usually that's the two of us get together, throw on some stand-up CDs.
Come on, you get some Dom Irrera? Is that
Dom Irrera?
Yeah, right?
We watch hockey games, we chew with little broken glass.
Roll up the sleeves on our blazer and tell some jokes. All right, hit me. So Bob Greenblatt in his studio.
Well, I'm just saying that, like, this fall we see a lot of shows that are very un-NBC, and I feel like it's very strange. It's one thing to say, like, from now on we are going to be a popular network. Like, it doesn't, many coming-of-age comedies have taught us you can't just declare that you're popular. So he has shows like Guys with Kids, which is a very broad multi-camera show about, do you want to guess what it's about?
Is it about older grown-ups?
It is about older grown-ups north of the wall. And so what's interesting about Go On is that it's sort of high-profile in that it stars, it's Matthew Perry's return to the network that made him a snarky god.
After a brief dalliance with ABC for Mr. Sunshine.
Yeah, and a brief dalliance with whatever Studio 60 was. But here's the thing about the show, right? So, and this is sort of what I'm writing, is that for a long time, people who, critics and people on Twitter are obsessed with Community. And Community is a very fascinating show, whether you like it or don't like it. But the one thing that I think has sort of been misconstrued is the idea that NBC hates it. It hates its own show. It wants to kill it. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's renewed it for 4 seasons. So that's one sign that it doesn't hate it. 2, on paper, Community is exactly the kind of comedy that NBC would want to have on the air. It's about a group of, it's comedy 101. It's about a group of mismatched strangers who are brought together by sort of wacky circumstance, learn to love, learn about each other. There's there's a casual diversity to the cast, which is really nice, and NBC's often, tried to champion that in its shows. Mm-hmm. The problem is that the show on paper is very different from the show that Dana Harmon delivered, which is basically a show that comments on the idea set.
Experiment.
Yeah, it sort of subverts the idea instead of celebrating it. So it makes sense that NBC would want to have a show that follows that blueprint more exactly on its fall schedule. Mm-hmm. What's odd is they have 2, because one is Community, because they fired Dan Harmon.
Yeah, right.
The version of the zombie Community that comes back might well be that show. And even if it is, it's going to be better than Go On. This is what I'm saying, because Community at least has, some spark in its writers' room, some very talented actors. Go On paper, it's a very competent pilot. Like, it introduces everything very breezily. Matthew Perry is that most overrepresented job on TV, a snarky shock jock. Mm-hmm. Who is humble, like his wife dies and he's not dealing with it, so his work forces him to go to basically like bereavement therapy, group therapy.
Yeah.
And there he meets a suitably wacky group of people. One of whom is Julie White, who's an underrated actress. I think she's in the Transformers movies as the mom.
Oh, she's the mom. She's LaBeouf's mom.
Yeah, she's been she's a stage actor. She's really funny.
Some would say the moral center of the Transformers trilogy.
What's Bumblebee then?
Yeah.
She's really good in it. Bill Cobbs is in it as a wise older man, which I believe he's always the go-to guy for that.
Yes.
Brett Gelman, who's sort of a very creepy comedian.
Bill Cobbs reviving his role in New Jack City.
I wish. The problem is that it's exactly what you think it would be if you thought that in a lab they were like, let's make the type of sitcom we want to make. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly competent and totally soulless and uninteresting, and it doesn't really it just doesn't really speak well to the future of NBC's brand, because it's one thing to say you're going to be better, but, here's a sports analogy, like you actually need the players, you actually need the shows.
Right.
So it's interesting.
How many episodes have you seen of this?
Just the one.
Oh, okay.
And
so, you never know.
I'm totally confident passing judgment on it.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, the first few episodes of Community were not exactly on song, right? Like they were.
Right, that's a good point. I mean, the thing is, there's talent here, and even Matthew Perry. I mean, this dude knows how to be in a sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
He knows where the lights are pointed.
He definitely knows how to hit his marks and where to stand on the masking tape. But it's just a little bit. It's not a little bit. It's a lot bit soggy and predictable. But and that's our first taste of the fall 2012 TV season.
Moving on from the fall 2012 TV season, but sticking with soggy and predictable. Although I don't know if predictable is the right word, but I got a chance to see Total Recall this weekend.
Yeah, and this is, you and I are, you're the president, I think I'm the treasurer.
Yeah,
I
almost feel like it was like you're the founder, and then I usurped you in a corporate takeover, but I've kept you on the board. No,
this is not right. If you're going a big analogy, you're the guy that had the idea in his garage, 30 years ago,
and then like primer. Yeah.
and then I Steve Jobs you, you're Wozniak. I took your idea and tried to market it.
Yeah.
But let's be clear about one thing, Chris. We've known each other a very long time.
Yeah.
Through a majority of that time, you have deeply loved Colin Farrell.
Yeah, I think that for some reason I stand behind his work. You know what I mean? And I really, for a stretch in the first decade of the 21st century, really enjoyed confronting people in bars and positing the theory that Colin Farrell had not made a bad movie.
Explain this.
Even though he definitely has. And I haven't seen several of them, but I stuck to it. This is sort of like, I really do feel like I left New York in a blaze of glory and Colin Farrell defense. And
that's how I would describe your time in New York.
I swear to God, there are dudes who are like, I don't know that guy Chris. That's the dude who was screaming at me about Phone Booth one night, right? So I wrote something. You've written something in the past about a year ago. You wrote something about Colin Farrell's move from being a movie star to a character actor. I pretty much took that and did a career arc about following his rise, fall, and resurrection, leading to his fall again, really with Total Recall. I mean, it's not. I don't really want to talk about Total Recall. They're if you want to see Kate Beckinsale and Jessica Biel wail on each other, they took Mars out of it. It's just go watch the first Total Recall. But Colin Farrell is one of our most interesting sort of actors, I think.
Can you describe his appeal? Because I think that our friend and Grantland colleague Alex Papadimos tweeted this, I think, last week, and I think he was right, that no one has ever anticipated a movie more than you anticipated Miami Vice.
Yeah, I feel I think I said this in the piece, but basically, I incepted Miami Vice. I'm aware of the fact that it was a television show beforehand, but when you put together all the pieces of, let's get Michael Mann to shoot something in the dark on video and bring Colin Farrell, who's clearly on all of the Ambien, and put him in this movie with Jamie Foxx and Gong Li and kill everything. I was like, this really is going to be better than Apocalypse Now.
I feel like neither of us are nautical people.
Right.
I feel like you invented the term "go fast boat." I feel like literally that's our level of boating expertise, and that was represented in that movie.
But that movie it was kind of a disappointment, I think, largely because of the 40-minute tango interlude that interrupts the narrative arc. But you can smell the Patron fumes coming off of that movie. Yeah.
I mean, indulgent.
Some things happened in Panama or wherever they shot that thing. There was shootings on the set, and Michael Mann was like, use it. Why do I like Colin Farrell? Okay, so I think the most representative Colin Farrell performance, the best Colin Farrell performance outside of his first one, or his first major one, which was Tigerland, is In Bruges.
Totally.
And if I described In Bruges, which I will, which is about two Irish hitmen who are on the lam in Brussels, right? Belgium?
It's in Belgium.
Belgium, sorry. American geography. And they go to Belgium on the lam, on the run from a crime boss played by Ralph Fiennes, and they're awaiting instructions / their comeuppance in this kind of purgatory-like town. And you would think that based on the trailer and maybe just by that tagline that I just gave, it's a kind of smart alecky, tough-talking, almost the Guy Ritchie-styled movie, which Colin Farrell probably could have nailed. He pretty much did a couple years later in London Boulevard, which is a little scene crime movie that came out, I think, last year. But the thing I like about Colin Farrell is the decisions he makes, not only in the roles he chooses, but once in those roles, I feel like he always undermines or deviates from what you would expect that performance to be. So he will play a hitman as Woody Allen, basically. You know what I mean? Like, as this very anxious, self-aware, neurotic person on the edge of a nervous breakdown, or the verge of a nervous breakdown. And the same goes for even something as stupid and ridiculous as Alexander, where he plays a conqueror who's supposed to sort of be very, assertive, I guess, as this, like, wild, pubescent teenager almost, you know what I mean? And I think that he always makes these really interesting choices within his roles, and I've always just found that he takes these, a genre movie, whether it's something like not in Bruges, but it's something like
Daredevil, even.
Yeah, Daredevil, Minority Report, Recruit, Heart's War, and there's just something a little bit alive in each of those performances.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's sort of always dangerous to try to comment on the fine line between the actor and the performance, but I do think that line is incredibly thin with him, and I think that makes him very fascinating, because you get the sense, the way the sort of the star machine worked then, still works. He made an impression in a very small movie. It was Tigerland, right? It was his first movie. And all of a sudden, he's anointed as the next big star before he's done anything. And this happens all the time. It happened to what's his name from Avatar, Sam Worthington.
Yeah, it happened. It was happening a lot around the time of Colin Farrell, like a few years prior to him. Very similar thing happened with Matthew McConaughey, where he was in Lone Star briefly, and he was also in Dazed and Confused. But he was in Lone Star, and people were just like, that guy's a movie star. And then they put him in A Time to Kill.
Right, and what was interesting about McConaughey in his earlier movies was just completely bleached out and revealed to be something different when he's when he's not allowed to do anything other than be virtuous. Yeah. And I feel like the same thing happened with Colin Farrell. But the extra level with Farrell is that he seemed to be as surprised to be there as maybe people watching the movies were. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that came through to the point where when he's playing a movie, when he was taking on the role of a movie star's role, he seemed to be playing that part too. And I think that what we see in Miami Vice was sort of the like the bloated hangover of like him, and we know from his personal life in the tabloids at the time that he was
which he's been incredibly frank about.
That he was not dealing with it particularly well. And so what's been amazing about his later roles, whether it was in Horrible Bosses, his character actor roles, Horrible Bosses, or in Bruges even, is that we see the sort of the cracked lunatic sort of underneath the surface.
Yeah.
And he's having much more fun. And it sounds like in Total Recall, it's just so weird and sort of disappointing that the career arc, the sign that he's all the way back, means that he gets to be put at the top of another bomb where he doesn't get to have any fun.
Yeah, and I think that to his credit, I think Total Recall could have been a good idea. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't have taken, and if people want to read more about the source material behind Total Recall and just Philip K. Dick adaptations in general, they should read Zach Baron's piece on Grantland from last week about the movie. But there's no rule that the Total Recall remake or reboot couldn't have been a decent movie, and I'm sure at some point Colin Farrell was in a meeting where he thought that was the case. It's just that he had been making he was sort of on this really idiosyncratic path for the couple of years prior to Total Recall, where he was in like Horrible Bosses, where he played a balding, coked up guy who was into trannies.
Yeah.
He was in, help me out here.
Well, you liked him in Fright Night too.
He's awesome in Fright Night, and that's another movie which obviously got hacked to bits halfway through. But Fright Night's really delightful for the first half of it. I don't know. He just seems like I can't name a lot of other actors that I find more compelling to watch. It's like I enjoy Matt Damon movies fine. Like a lot of these movie stars are really good at carrying movies. I think Colin Farrell actually has a very slippery grip when he's carrying a movie, but if he drops it, it's almost as interesting as if he keeps it in his hands.
Yeah, and he does seem this misstep to the contrary, perhaps, but he does seem to be on that path now of doing just interesting things, and being okay within that. And he's weirdly, if you look at it, his IMDb page, which clearly you and I have bookmarked.
Yes, very much so.
He's worked with.
I assessed that joint.
He's worked with so many great directors. He's put together a pretty impressive little CV. I mean, from Terrence Malick to Woody Allen to
Spielberg.
Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
Spielberg. Yeah. So yeah, well, we're Well,
and there's a lot to look forward to. He's got a movie coming out this fall, I think. This written and directed by the guy who did In Bruges, Martin McDonagh, and it's called Seven Psychopaths, which looks excellent.
Yeah, that's a pretty good name, too.
Yeah. Before we, I don't want to. We're going to get into some music soon, but I don't want to. I would be remiss, Andy, with just the way that the Olympics are sort of taking over the world here. If you didn't have an opinion about what, Brian Curtis wrote a piece on Grantland today about this. We've been talking about it in the office a lot, about the way that NBC's covering it, but also just sort of the way that the Olympics are now, happening in two different worlds. They're happening online and on our TVs. And, I, for one, I live in LA, and I've had a really difficult time, which, even though I run a sports blog, keeping up with what's happening when actually seeing things when they happen, or seeing things and not having them already be spoiled for me. And, it is sort of, it does have parallels to the way we talk about television, too, where, you'll have these shows and people are sort of tweeting during them or sending you emails like, oh my God, Walt, and you're just like, I haven't watched it yet, Yeah. Have you had any events spoiled for you?
Well, I think it's been interesting because, usually, because we talk about spoilers all the time, and it's like a major part of our jobs when we're covering TV, which is strange, but it's become that way. But now it's gone much more mainstream because of the Olympics, where you have NBC carefully curating their version of it so they can present it to the audience. And to be fair, I think the majority of the people watching the Olympics do not go on to Twitter, so they don't actually care.
Yes,
it's not really an issue, but yeah, so they're curating their version of it. But anyone who accidentally walks past the TV tuned into our employer, like at a sports bar, is going to know who won.
The 100-meter
final, right, hours before it happened. It's sort of odd, and I think you and I were talking about this, and a critic that we both read, Jim Pony Wozik at Time, wrote a piece that you brought to my attention from last month about how just enough with the spoilers, like enough with the spoiler phobia, that it's really not that big a deal. Like any story that can be ruined by if you learn the twist really probably isn't a story worth hearing anyway. And I think that's I think that's a pretty interesting and provocative point, and I don't disagree with it in terms of TV. Like, if, Breaking Bad would still be worth watching, even if starting from the beginning, even if someone told you how it ended. Right. I don't think that would devalue the point of watching it. But I do think that sports are the one live thing we have left. When people say that they don't even want to have a TV anymore because they can get everything through Netflix or through iTunes, really, other than, like, breaking catastrophic news, sports is why you have a TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's the only thing I really watch on television.
And the drama of that isn't, the drama of sports and the drama of the Olympics, as much as NBC wants to tell you otherwise, isn't, the triumphant, against the odds childhood of the pole vaulter. It's whether the pole vaulter vaulted the pole, right?
Right, exactly.
So I feel like this is the one, I definitely would be anti-spoiler in this. I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's been difficult. I mean, you talk about the 100 meters. On Sunday, I got home. I wanted to watch it. I, saw on Twitter that they were getting ready.
You poured yourself a big glass of glass.
I put on my Jamaica track uniform, and I turned on the internet, and I couldn't get NBC to just show me that race, right? So it was like there was a different race going on. I was searching around. I'm not even criticizing. I mean, that's a big project. I probably couldn't have. It's not like I would have had a better, if I wouldn't have done a better job programming the Olympics online. I'm just saying,
Don't sell yourself short.
Well, no, but the thing is that I have very fond memories of watching the Olympics with my family. It's like an end of summer thing, and you're watching the swimming, and it felt like it was on it felt like it was on all day, and it also felt like you understood when things were on, and you didn't miss them. I didn't miss Michael Phelps, and that happened in Beijing. You know what I mean? I saw those races. I don't remember now if I saw them on tape or not, but I didn't know the result. I didn't know when that relay happened. I was like, this is amazing,
I think the one thing that everyone is excited about, and certainly NBC is excited about, what they always want, is that the next Olympics, I think, is more or less in the Eastern time zone.
Yeah, in Rio.
It's in Rio, so I think that will change things slightly, but I think also the whole circumstance will be different because NBC is clearly going to spend 4 years thinking about their strategy here.
Right.
I don't want to be sympathetic to a corporate entity, but I do think it's a challenge.
Sure, absolutely, and I think that the world is changing in that regard. We see the way that news stories are covered, we see the way television is covered. I think that this stuff is when you, even if it's a minority, it's such a vocal minority of people on Twitter who want things the way they want it.
I think it probably does make sense going forward that just to make everything. I mean, this is sort of the way all things are going, right? They would make everything available all the time. You could watch it live, but then the people who want to watch, their ratings will still be through the roof, I think. That's the thing.
Right.
We're talking about spoilers. Even if people who watch the race live at 2 in the afternoon, wherever you happen to be, most likely that night will turn on the TV and watch the way it's presented to them.
Yes.
Because then they actually would appreciate the context more, or the narrative, or the all the different the warm up heats and all this stuff. So I think that makes sense.
Before we just one last thing we wanted to get to, because we're going to have Rembert Browne come in and talk about music in a second. But one thing we wanted to mention is we have a semi-regular feature on the podcast called the Double Down Book Club, which highlights some of me and Andy's favorite novelists, typically crime novelists.
Yeah, and can be found online in the worryingly unupdated Tumblr site.
I know.
Snitchbutlers.tumblr.com.
We're a couple behind, but we'll get there.
We'll get there.
A lot of irons on the stove here. What is it? Is that their saying? Anyway, what we wanted to talk about this week in honor of the Olympic Games being held in England is a English novelist named David Peace.
I feel like this is not the version of England that the backers of the Olympics
They
would
did
like
not feature this in the the opening ceremony. Did not feature this. This is a weird recommendation to make, but I would almost guarantee that David Peace wrote a quartet of novels called 1974, 1977, 1980, and 1983. I believe that I'm correct in those 4 numbers. There's a quartet of crime novels that focus loosely, I guess, on a series of kidnappings and murders of children in Yorkshire in the late 70s and early 80s in England, and all the sort of labor problems and political problems and unrest that was happening in England during that time. So this is like around Thatcher and all that. I would say that these are very difficult reads. If you have read any of the James Ellroy novels set in L.A. during the post-war era, like Big Nowhere, L.A. Confidential, American Tabloid, etc., they're similar in tone and in like their kind of fever dream prose style, but they are these David Peace books are very, very dark. However, I do recommend them because as a piece, no pun intended, they kind of do paint like an incredible portrait of England over the course of almost a decade.
Not unlike what Danny Boyle did in 2 hours.
Yes,
with the Queen jumping
not
out of
unlike the way
airplane.
Danny Boyle covered thousands of years in just a few moments on the opening ceremony.
But correct me if I'm wrong, these were adapted into an equally brutal film series.
They were compressed. So there's a Red Riding movie. It's about the Red Riding area of England, which I think, and somebody can correct. As I butcher Irish actor names often, I am probably going to butcher English geography right now. But I believe the Red Riding area is this area around Yorkshire, like on the coast of.
And so this was a trilogy, the Red Riding trilogy?
It was a quartet.
But the movies were a trilogy?
The movies was just, I think it was just one movie that took in. No, there were 2 movies. There were 2 movies, and I think the 2 movies summed up all the books.
Right, but so we're basically saying don't watch those.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Read the books, because they're. I mean, even though Andrew Garfield and Patty Considine are very good in those movies, the books are far superior and much more complex and much more rewarding.
Apparently, and I'm doing a little internet research while we're podcasting, it was a television film trilogy made out of the 4 books.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right. I only saw the first 2 then, but yeah.
So not relevant
Yeah.
for our discussion at all. But if you want, but so if you're tired of all the happy, smiling faces you see in London enjoying the Olympics.
Yeah, and if the other Double Down Book Club recommendations have just been too sunny.
Exactly. Let's really, if you're just having too much fun. That's right. A guy tweeted that he read the Willie Vlotton book I recommended, Northline.
I saw that.
Which I really appreciated, but he was like, thank you for the recommendation. I now have to put cigarettes out on my arm.
We're just trying to bring happiness to people's lives.
I feel like we gotta start recommending some Dave Barry or something. It's a little bleak. But so I don't think we should pretend that this next portion, this final portion of our podcast is happening live.
No, right. So late last week, we just so happened to find Andy Greenwald, myself, and Rembert Browne in Los Angeles in the Grantland complex at the same time.
In the Grantland megalopolis.
Yeah, right. And we were able to get in the studio together and continue what is an ongoing discussion about the best songs of the summer. We will put up a link to the previous discussion.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, before we get into this, I'd like to apologize that I think it got a little dark, this conversation. And also, I just don't think we really gave enough verbal ink, to the fact that Call Me Maybe is just inescapably the only song of the summer.
Yeah, it's not. This is all like playing for second place at this point.
I would also say that I was being very pro that song, I think, in our recorded conversation. That song, you were talking about Inception, that song got in my brain over the last 2 days like Lucas Haas, and it's poison.
Okay, is it fried out now? You're done?
I love it, but it woke me up every 15 minutes last night. Seriously, it's not a cool thing.
Ken Watanabe is just like, we will meet on a train.
He just kept handing me his number.
Yeah.
It was so weird. So that's a fun conversation, and yeah.
All right, I will talk to you next week, buddy.
Can't wait.
Later. So now we're joined by Rembert Browne. Rembert is in the building. Andy's in the building. We're usually not all in the same physical space.
No, usually Rembert and I
Five
are in the
MCs.
same physical space in New York. We share a small
on
physical
G-Chat,
space.
But we found ourselves in the same office, and we thought, what better time? It's early August. It's in Los Angeles. We're all here. It's time to talk about the summer jams.
Yeah, we did this the first time in June, I believe.
I think it was
Beginning of
June, yeah.
It was June.
And we discussed the state of summer jams, and we each brought 3 nominees.
Yeah.
Should
Should we revisit this?
we all struck out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any of us really got it.
I would just like to say You're Welcome, Gaslight Anthem.
Yep, yep. Number 1 song of the summer, thanks to Chris Ryan. That was
Still killing the chart.
Black Mamba Kiss of Death on that song.
Carly Rae Jepsen, R.I.P.
Yeah, weirdly, that was right. You know,
She's not R.I.P.
No, she lives forever.
The Olympics actually made her
she's
less R.I.P.
ruling in peace.
And I can speak to the power of Carly Rae Jepsen. I was just recently
Preacher.
on a weekend trip, and my girlfriend had not seen the Justin Bieber video.
Really?
Yeah, she had not seen this Justin Bieber video. It was like watching a cat follow a flashlight. We watched it, and it ended, and she was just like, play that again.
Wait,
Like literally, like the Bieber version where it's like Carly
I don't think
Rae.
Andy knows this version.
Yeah,
Do you
I
understand? So
yes.
this is like the song, but it's Bieber and Selena Gomez, and also now that we're talking, can I just get into this?
Let's go.
Why is Ashley Tisdale in that video? Because generationally speaking, I think, and correct me if I'm
She's
wrong.
older.
She is older, and she's hanging out at somebody's house. Like she had her high school moment where she was in a movie called High School Musical.
Great musical.
And Zac Efron, he's like moved on, right?
Charlie St. Cloud.
Right.
Is
And
this-
now Ashley Tisdale is trying to get on another
Is this the
18-year-old.
generational version
Swerve?
of the Ciroc commercial we talked about
Yeah,
last week?
I mean,
With Chad Michael Murray?
Yeah.
Well, so he stepped it up,
Yeah.
but these other kids are still down
Yeah.
playing in the
I don't know if
sandbox.
Chad Michael Murray stepped
Okay,
it
but
up.
Yeah. That's all.
we can unpack that
That's
comment
the other
later. I think we
podcast.
gotta stay
My
on
point
focus
is that
here.
video of Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez and Ashley Tisdale lip syncing or lip dubbing to
Well,
Carly Rae Jepsen is powerful.
Rembert, being 1 or 2 or 9 years younger than some of us in this room, I think
Okay.
had his finger more on the pulse,
Yeah.
apparently, shockingly, of Summer Jam
Yeah, it was
culture.
crazy that Twin Shadow didn't.
So weird, right? Like I thought I really nailed that one because you had Bieber.
I had
didn't
Bieber,
really break through.
which didn't break through the way I thought it was.
Can we
going to.
had
call
Carly Rae
Bieber a
Jepsen.
failure at this point? Not a failure across the board, obviously.
Why don't you call him that to his face,
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, I think Carly stole his shine a little bit, which is,
Spot-rushed him.
and I think we talked about that a little bit. Like, was she getting
Right.
like bigger than Bieber? And like, she's not bigger than Bieber, but her song is
Carly Rae Jepsen's sort of like the baby in Splice.
it like yeah.
It's where it's like you didn't know what you were creating, right? Did you see Splice?
I did
Yeah,
not.
trust me.
Should we just let that breathe?
Yeah.
Because you also had you had Meek Mill and Dre came in, which is getting some play.
Yeah.
But I think if I could just let's push this conversational boulder up the hill a little bit
Okay.
further, has anything achieved any sort of cultural dominance? I don't think so. I think there are a couple songs that we missed that we're going to mention. We're gonna breeze through, but I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything that would be a de facto.
Well, we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about chart popularity, and then we're talking about maybe critical or slash like bloggerati hold on the imagination,
Yeah.
right?
that word
Well-
is not to be said on this podcast.
Bloggerati.
Bloggerati. So here's one reason I think that there hasn't been a defining song of the summer.
Okay.
And it's because there have been some albums that have taken a lot of the attention
Sure.
away from just individual songs.
That's funny. It's very not.
and we're not an album culture
No,
anymore.
that's over.
So what
Yeah.
would you say would be a couple of those?
Well, I think Channel Orange, Frank Ocean
Yeah.
took like
A lot of
a
attention.
lot of attention away from just like radio singles because
There's really no song that's
Yeah.
broken out off of that. A
yeah,
few have.
a few
Some
have,
small
but
ways.
it's
but-
not the album does not have 4 radio singles. Like there's some songs that can go in
Yeah.
there, but people were obsessed with like the full package of the album,
Yeah.
and that goes
and when that happens in
And
the
the
summer,
narrative.
and the narrative and everything about it, which is completely against the idea of like a summer banger that you listen to all summer.
And there's not really like, I mean, Pyramids is pretty incredible, but like
It's 9 minutes long.
Yeah,
like
That alone. So what was the other album you were going to mention?
Well, I think that was one. I think this build up to 2 days ago, which was God Forgives I Don't, and sort of, yes, it has Rick Ross sort of dropping a single here, dropping a single there, but
none of the singles really
we all
hit.
should have been suspicious that this was coming out in the beginning of August. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think everybody got excited for like a week, and it's just like, it's like Total Recall coming out tomorrow.
Like when
It's
Hollywood dumps.
Yeah, it's like
movies.
they're dumping it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a big build up to that album, but then none of the singles really took off.
Well, that's a brilliant segue. Well done. Have you been here before?
I have.
You have. Rick Ross's album, we talked about that last week. Maybe it's a grower, as Chris said, optimistically, but his best performance is on my favorite song of the summer, which is French Montana's Pop That.
That's sort of how the song goes.
That's pretty much it. Like, for those of you who haven't heard it, it's more or less that.
Yeah.
With a video with more bikinis in it. This is sort of one of those moments, right, where a younger rapper somehow gets the cell phone numbers of people who are much more successful than he is,
Right.
and they don't take the beat from him.
It's also that moment where, like, I don't know whether it's a talent drought, but, like, I really like French Montana, but he's maybe his usage is a little high right now, right? Like,
his PER.
we're relying on French Montana to do a little too much
I
here.
like that you almost said the rapper from Breaking Bad, French Montana, which is a whole other thing. But so this song, Pop That, we've been talking about it. We put it on a Spotify playlist. It's French Montana, but it's with Rick Ross, Drake, and Wayne, and it does seem to be elevating French to a level that maybe he's boxing a little bit outside of his weight class. But it is a very fun song.
It's an amazing song.
It makes me feel very excited.
I remember when the song came out, I remember that you changed your GChat status.
It did.
Not
to
surprising.
Pop That, drop.
I believe it's Don't Stop, Pop That. Don't Stop, Pop That. Don't
Stop. And then some things you can't
Is that
say.
why you did that?
Don't stop, pop that, don't stop. Pop
I thought
that,
you were
pop
just
that,
having a
pop
nervous
that.
breakdown. I didn't.
It's usually hard to tell when I'm quoting a song in all caps or having a nervous breakdown.
I would like to just quickly mention a couple of, like, in the tradition of Gaslight Anthem and Japan Droids and Twin Shadow and some
in
of
the tradition of failures.
Yeah. No, but there's been some, like, really good songs there. Like, so Kendrick Lamar's Swimming Pool was pretty great.
It's a really good song.
Yeah, I mean, that was an excellent.
And you
excellent
like
song.
this even though you don't live on the West Coast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rem.
Oh,
yeah.
you hit Rem. I live on the West Coast. Yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
I really like
Okay.
Kendrick.
All right.
Yeah.
Can we say New Godflow?
New Godflow, but here's the thing: is New Godflow?
What is this face Rembert is making? Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
I like it, but I'm not upset.
Get out of here.
I have a high bar for Kanye-related things.
See, this is the Kanye track off of the Good Music compilation with Pusha, and Pusha murders this.
Yeah.
And I've listened to this song. I've been in Los Angeles 5 days. I've listened to it on average 11 times per car trip.
Yeah.
Not getting old.
Yeah.
It's not getting old either. How weird it is when I realize I've had my window down.
Yeah.
Have you finished the song, or do you
No, I turn it off
yeah.
before the call and response with
Yeah.
itself.
Okay.
But the first two verses are just
They're- okay,
phenomenal.
yeah.
And the Rest in Peace to Whitney Houston part gets me very excited.
Yeah, I do feel like these songs, like this and Mercy,
Yeah.
2 Chainz are not like they could be Pusha.
We should talk about
There,
Mercy.
there
real
are
quick.
fast-forwardable bits in
Yeah.
all these songs.
I think Mercy is an interesting thing to talk about because it got popular before the summer started. But
Yeah,
I
that's
think
why we didn't talk
because
about it.
there haven't been that many summer anthems, it's sort of stuck around. Like it's still
lingering.
It's still like, it came out and then there was sort of a build up to the video. The video gave it a longer run. But it's still around, and
I also think it's like the treasure, like, you save the best present for last. Like, that is a long song with a lot of performances and guest verses on it, and the song changes
Yes.
Yeah.
for Kanye's verse, which I have mixed feelings about. But everyone only wants the 2 Chainz part. The 2 Chainz verse is the best part.
It's
But
amazing.
you have to wait, 4 minutes to
Yeah.
get there, which is a test of our patience.
Yeah.
Speaking of 2 Chainz, we're talking about him and Drake.
Yeah, well, I would say that Drake's verse on No Lie is probably my favorite verse of the summer right
It's
now.
very. You also love his appearance in that video. We've talked about
Yes.
that when he sort of reinvented himself as. How did you describe it? He was like the bad guy from an 80s karate movie or something. Right?
I think he looks like a Panamanian drug dealer.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of.
But he's owning it.
That's
He's
one
owning
of my favorite looks of his. He also has the.
He was wearing cargo shorts and like a camo vest and hadn't shaved in 3 days, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Like, I think he's really testing Rihanna's, like, threshold for, like, self-destruction by, like, will you date a guy who works at an archery store from 1986?
Okay.
The answer to that?
The answer
Always yes.
Always yes.
Blanket yes.
Always yes.
Just another one that I want to throw out there, which is a little bit off the beaten path, is, and this is like, we were just talking about this the other day, is the recently reunited Afghan Wigs and their cover of Frank Ocean's Love Crimes.
This is essential. Did we not talk about this?
We have not talked about this on the podcast yet.
So Afghan Wigs, who we have talked about, we love, have done a very smart thing that most bands who reform have not done, which is they've reformed, they're going on tour, they're playing all the hits that people, well, none of them are hits. Yeah. They're playing the songs that people like.
That's why they needed to reunite.
But they're releasing music that's just covers of songs. They did an old soul
like a
sample.
New Orleans R&B song.
Yeah, a cover, and then they did this Frank Ocean cover.
Which is
and
incredible.
this is what they are incredible at.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
And they've done, like, in the past, if you're like looking around on Google, you should try and check out their cover of Lost in the Supermarket by Clash.
Yes.
Which is pretty great.
Well, and Dooley did a whole, as Twilight Singers, did a whole covers album where he covered Fleetwood Mac.
Well, and Bjork. Yeah.
Bjork, yeah, and that was called She Loves You, I think.
She Loves You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Okay, so any other jams you got there?
You have at least 5 things written on the one piece of paper we brought
Do you
in.
just say Owl City over and over again?
No, it's just nothing but Owl City. No, I mean, a lot of what I wrote down had to do with, I think Ross's, sort of the Maybach empire has put out probably the most music this summer, but
no question.
It is a little disheartening, and I think a lot of this goes to this album coming out and potentially being underwhelming, is that, you know, there's not always a match between quantity and quality. You know, like when they came out with the Power Circle,
I was going to say, yeah.
that was like a big deal.
That's
it's
off
like
the MMG compilation album that came out a month ago and nobody cared about.
And, you know, it's like a 10-minute song and video.
Featuring your boy Kendrick,
like, gunplay, you know.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah,
there's always okay.
There's nothing wrong
but
with
I do
gunplay.
feel like Ross could use some guy, like whoever, if he could use be like, we're done with anything over 5 minutes. You can just like start cutting.
And
he needs David Jacoby.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
basically.
And
then
the
there
studio,
was-
finger on the button.
There was Three Kings, which came out 2 weeks ago, I think, which
that
was
sucks.
Jay-Z, Dre, and Ross, which is like a horrible, I think, a horrible pairing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
like
It's a great headphones commercial, but a bad song.
it's just it's not good. I don't, and then I think the other one was 16, which is the song with Andre 3000.
Yes.
Right.
Which is a unbelievable 2+ minute Andre 3000 verse.
Anything where he's actually rapping is
and
the
like
best.
how long is that solo?
Too long.
Yeah.
I think the official term is too long.
Can I put you guys on the spot? Yeah. And we can wrap it up soon, but like, what's the last song that featured like the biggest names or the best rappers alive at the moment on a song together that was actually good? Was it Swagger Like Us?
And
Even Swagger Like Us, isn't it like just like the chorus basically? Isn't that down to Maya? Like, you know what I mean?
The song isn't that good, but just
it's pretty good.
when I think about that song, I think about when they all performed it at the
VMAs,
VMAs, and they're all in the suits. I'm like, okay, this is like a movement. This is amazing.
Yeah.
One thing that I think that's changed, and this might be a tangent, but one of the things that I think changed the dynamic of just like they'll mail the track to Ross in Miami, then mail the track to Wayne, and they just put their things on, is that on Watch the Throne, it was so clear that they recorded together, so they could go back and forth, and that sort of elevated it. And I think one of the reasons I like New Godflow is because it was the same situation.
Yeah.
They're clearly that sometimes they go back and forth, they finishing each other's lines, and they made the song together. So I feel like that sort of changed the paradigm for posse cuts. And has anyone ever said paradigm and posse cuts together before?
I don't know. It's really
Definitely.
It sounds great.
Can I get royalties on
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. I do think that there are a lot of songs with 3 people, but not a lot with like 4 and more. So I don't know if maybe 3 is a posse cut, but I think the last great one is I'm on One.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
that's
a lot of those
Well, Stay Schemin', which is my favorite song of the year. So
is that till 2012? Wow.
Yeah, January. That was Rich Forever, which dropped on New Year's Day.
Yes,
What a way to start a year.
I know. So I don't want to come off. Maybe are we sounding a little down?
No,
on
I
this?
think
Are
we
negative?
named like 10 songs that we liked.
We like the songs. I just think that we commissioned this project as if there was going to be at least one winner or some sort of debate, and I don't think there is.
No, but let's end this one. This should be a pretty easy question to answer. So there was all these new songs and all these developing songs coming out, but what's the thing you've listened to the most this summer?
It's a very good question. I mean, Mercy and New Godflow, for sure. And Pop That.
Yeah, I've listened to Channel Orange a surprisingly high number of times. Like, not even... I've picked out a couple songs that I really like, but they're not really summery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think, like, the closest thing to an Anthony song, I think, on my own and hearing out and about is still Mercy.
Yeah. And I feel that way about the Killers song. I listen to that.
I love the Killers song.
Runaways.
Runaways is great.
I listen to that a lot.
What about you?
I would say probably, I mean, other than older stuff, like I'd probably say Channel Orange.
I just feel like Pop That is my safe space. Like even getting ready for this podcast or the one I'm about to do after this, I just put it on a little bit.
I want
to
to take what you just said and like clip it and have
Yeah.
that just be the entire podcast.
That basically is the podcast. So maybe we'll revisit at the end of the summer.
Yeah,
or
we'll
when we're all
check back in as the
in
leaves
LA.
turn.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just not the same anymore. Maybe Summer Jams.
Don't say that.
Wow, it's like
I don't
the
know.
end of the second Lord of the Rings movie where it's just like maybe
Well,
we're all
that's
going to
the middle
die.
part of the trilogy.
Yes.
We
You're
will
right.
finish this.
All right,
and nail
we will
it.
return
This
with
is
the
the dark
Jedi.
chapter.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks, Rem.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Rob.
We'd like to thank you for listening to today's show. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page at espnradio.com.
Okay.
All right, fans, by now you should know that millions of fans use StubHub and the StubHub app to find the seats they want to games, concerts, and more. But one thing you may not know is that you can also go on StubHub to set a price alert. That means you choose where you want to sit and the price you want to pay. Then if another fan lists tickets for sale within your price range, StubHub will email to let you know. Pretty great, huh? So head to StubHub today to get your tickets or the app to set a price alert. You can't go wrong.
StubHub!